Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll give it about a minute or so, let people get in and settled. Um, in the meantime, would love to hear where folks are joining us from. And I know that, it's only Wednesday, but never too early to start thinking about the weekend. So if you have some fun weekend plans, please drop them in the chat. Would love to see what everyone's got going on. Hello from Denmark. I love it. Hello, Denmark, New Jersey, Berlin. We already have a global audience. I love this. London. Amazing. Wow. Hamburg, New York, Switzerland. Oh my gosh, we are all over the place. I love this. Quebec. Amazing. From the hot Greece. Yes, feeling you with the heat. It's been quite toasty out here in New York as well. Amazing. Love it. All right, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Alicia Rossetti. I am Senior Field Marketing Manager for North America here at Leapsome. Really excited for today's session. One of our customer success managers here in New York, Paige Steffi, is going to lead us in a conversation on building resilience in a turbulent economy, which I know is a topic that we could probably discuss for an entire day, but for everyone's sake, we'll keep it to 45 minutes today. Throughout the session, please do feel free to drop in any questions you have using the question function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to those at the end. I'll be joined by Matt Cabanero, one of our account executives here in New York, for the Q&A session. So feel free to share any questions you have with us, and we'll get to them at the end there. But without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started with today's session.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining our webinar today. I'm super excited to chat with you a little bit about building resilience in the current economic climate. And we're going to take a look at the ways that companies can build resilience through specifically employee engagement during this webinar. My name is Paige, and I'm going to be your host for this part of the session. I am a customer success manager here at Leapsome. Been with the company for about 9 months, and it's been an awesome ride so far. But before I came to Leapsome, I did complete my master's in applied social psychology and held a variety of roles that focused a lot on cross-cultural communication and building relationships. So I'm excited to look at employee engagement with you all through a very psychological lens, so that we can talk a little bit about how you can leverage those different insights for your company. So in terms of a little bit of a run of show for this webinar today, we wanted to focus in on a few of the questions that we get really commonly here at Leapsome. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a little bit of definitions, right? So the difference between engagement and satisfaction and what that means for you and your employees. Then we're also going to talk about the effects of potentially deprioritizing investing in your employees and how that can have an overall effect on your wider business. And then finally, we're going to talk about some actionable takeaways from this webinar, how you can increase engagement at your own organization so that you have something to take home with you today, if you will. So I've put a very large number up here on the screen, 81,396 hours. So if y'all would like to guess what this very large number is, pop it in the chat right now. Some of you may have an idea, but we'll go ahead and go into our next slide here. I'm sure some of you got this right. That 81,396 hours is actually the amount of time that the average person spends at work during their life, which is crazy to think about. It's one of the only other things that we do more than go to work is sleep. So it's definitely important to think about how you are engaging with your employees when they're spending this amount of time with you during their lives. It's a lot of time. That's a staggering number. So it's definitely a apropos thing to be thinking about how you engage your employees and how you give them purpose while they are at work. So we actually at Leapsome did a little bit of a survey of HR leaders and employees, about 700 or so over the past year. And we've come up with some really interesting data-focused insights that I want to talk to you a little bit about now. And one of the most kind of stark comparisons that we came up with was how engaged HR professionals think their employees are versus the actual employees themselves. So you can see the HR folks over on this side of the screen here that show about 95% believe that their employees are engaged at work. The difference over on the other side here is when we asked employees, how engaged are you really at work? Only 37% of them actually answered that they are engaged. So this is quite a contrast and a difference of opinion when it comes to engagement versus satisfaction. And that will definitely come back up as we continue through this webinar. We also asked employees what their kind of look into the future was. And I do think it's important to note that there are a lot of comorbid factors going into this particular question, right? We're talking about a very uncertain economic climate. So folks may be looking into the future and feeling uncertain, but it is still important to note that 82% of the employees that we surveyed said that they were thinking about changing jobs within the next 12 months. That's a really big statistic and something that HR leaders, I cannot imagine, are excited to hear, because if you've got folks leaving all the time, you're going to be looking for more talent. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to retain the talent that you have rather than spending time recruiting folks? It's interesting to look at this quote here that notes that in absolute terms, resignations still far outnumber reductions. So people are quitting at 3 times the rate of layoffs. And I think that often stands in like direct contrast to what we're seeing in the news. We see all of these news of layoffs and folks having to, downsize numbers of staff, but it's crazy to think that resignations are still a big part of that. And those are potentially preventable at the end of the day. So that leads us into our first kind of question about satisfaction versus engagement. So it's important to think about these two words as separate topics at the end of the day, because satisfaction and engagement are not the same thing, even though they sound quite similar. So one of my favorite authors, Brene Brown, has a really great quote about leaders and investing time. So I'm just going to read it out loud to you here. Leaders must either invest a reasonable amount of time attending to fears and feelings, or squander an unreasonable amount of time trying to manage ineffective and unproductive behavior. So this quote is from her book, Dare to Lead. And it's important to note that the focus of this particular quote is not just on the employees. This is also on the leaders themselves. So you have to do a kind of dual look here, one inward and one outward, to address your own fears and feelings so that you can more effectively address the fears and feelings of your employees as well. And by doing that, you actually invest in yourself and in your employees and stop that ineffective behavior before it even starts happening, which is a really useful use of your time at the end of the day. So I told you all that I love psychology, so I do want to talk a little bit about the 3 principles of human motivation. And the first of them, we're going to look at it obviously through the world of work, but the first is autonomy. So this is the concept of your employees really feeling like they have a hold on the work that they do, that they have abilities to say what they want to work on and what they don't want to work on, that they are able to take control of the work that they are doing on a day-to-day basis. This particular bit of human motivation leads really well into the second, which is mastery. And mastery is a little bit of an interesting word to use, because essentially you would think that means that you're really good at all of your skills all of the time. But that's not exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about mastery in terms of human motivation. We're talking about mastery in the sense of wanting to consistently have learning opportunities at the job that you're at, wanting to be able to learn new skills and learn how to master them. So it's a really important thing for HR leaders to be thinking about, because this will allow you to have employees participate in these learning and development opportunities that are going to give them a sense of purpose at the end of the day. So purpose is another really important thing when we're thinking about motivation. Humans by nature want to feel like they're contributing to something that matters and something that aligns with their values. So it's a really important thing for HR leaders to consider these three principles when you're talking about how you're going to motivate your employees, how you're going to keep them engaged. Because if you're doing something that exists outside of these three principles, you may not necessarily be hitting that very important motivation button within your employees' brains. So one mistake that leaders can make as they kind of start thinking about employee engagement and deciding how they're going to move forward with learning and development processes or just engagement surveys or things along those lines is they'll ask the question, can we afford this? Is this something that is possible budgetarily? And we're going to talk a little bit about why it's important to reframe that question. So the idea of can we afford to invest in our people is a very reactive reaction. It's something that basically comes from a place of fear, right? And so a reactive situation is that, okay, we're having a rough time and we're not going to be able to talk about this rough time with our employees. So you decrease communication with employees through these tough times. And that's something that increases anxiety, makes people feel like they don't really know what's going on. So I would encourage folks to think about getting rid of reactive opportunities and think about a proactive solution that allows you to move forward more effectively. So the proactive version of this reactive situation is to say, okay, we're going through tough times, but what we're going to choose to do in this moment is take a look at the way we're communicating with our employees. We're going to talk about ways that we can improve this communication, build transparency, build trust with our employees so that they turn around and recognize that we are invested in them much the way that we want them to invest in this wider company. Let's take another look at a reactive situation here. So we're stressed about finances. So we're going to decide that, okay, we're going to cut back on training and development opportunities for employees because we don't have the budget for that. A proactive approach would say, let's get creative internally. What can we do that maybe has a slightly lower cost to improve the overall morale of our employees? So we're going to say, okay, let's think about implementing a mentorship or coaching program internally to develop employee skills and allow them to feel like they are still achieving some sort of that mastery level of human motivation. And you may say, okay, well, that's great for the employees that are being mentored. How does that encourage the folks who are being mentors? And I like to think that that honestly can level itself into the purpose motivation, right? So you're giving employees who are going to be serving as mentors purpose to say you're passing along your mastery to employees who are being mentored, which is a really great thing to do. And if you frame it properly, that can be the way that it's understood by the wider audience. And then we've also got one more reactive scenario here, saying that we're going to just kind of provide very limited opportunities for career development or for advancement. And what I would challenge folks in that situation to do is to double down and to actually provide clear progression frameworks for the employees that you have at your company. Say, here's where we're going to invest in you. Here's how we're going to build on your strengths and increase your capacity to do the things that you want to do within this company. So the reframe of this kind of reactive versus proactive approach is not can we afford to, but can we afford not to at the end of the day? So it's a very important kind of reframe to that question, and allows you to be proactive rather than reactive. So now let's get deeper into this satisfaction versus engagement situation. So I always really like to think about the definition of satisfaction as something that is far more fleeting and temporary than engagement. So temporary happiness is satisfaction. It's like, oh, okay, I'm good for now. Everything's fine. I'm chilling. But engagement is this slight switch, right? Where it's long-term feelings of purpose, growth, and belonging that are much more sustainable than satisfaction. Satisfaction is being content, whereas engagement is feeling a commitment to the company that you are working for, feeling like you are part of something beyond yourself. Satisfaction is passive. It's good, we're chilling. And engagement is active. I want to move forward. I'm excited for where this company is going, and I can see my part in that. It's important to think about this as a dichotomy between financial investment and emotional investment. When people are financially invested, they want to return. But when people are emotionally invested, they want to contribute. It's a natural thing of saying, this matters to me, so I want to be part of it. And then we've also got satisfaction as just straight up surviving. You're going to work and you're doing what you can, whereas engagement is thriving. And that translates really well to the company as well, right? Not just surviving, but thriving. So employee engagement, as we've talked about, is a transformational thing. It's very important to think about how moving folks from one end of a spectrum to another can really change your overall company situation. So let's talk a little bit about that secondary question. What happens if you deprioritize investing in people? So it's important to think of disengaged versus engaged employees kind of almost playing a tug of war with each other. And the strength that each side has actually comes from the actions that leadership and HR chooses to take. So you can kind of go towards your company vision, which will hopefully encourage people to be engaged, or away from your company's vision, which will cause them to become more disengaged. So it is also a bit of a continuum, right? So if you have folks who are disengaged, there are more of them over on that side, the kind of tide will shift to your company shifting away from its vision, folks becoming more disengaged, and that's not a situation that you want to be in. It's important also to think about this from the perspective of the fact that one employee can really change the path of a company. So imagine what 1,000 engaged employees can do, right? This is something that's like a really important thing to think about. You've got individuals who are moving you towards what your ultimate goal is as a company. And it's important to note that they are that, individuals. So the other thing that is good to think about here is that stark contrast that we talked about at the beginning of this presentation, right? 60% of employees say that they are emotionally detached at work, and 19% are actively disengaged from this Gallup poll in 2022. Those are stark numbers. This is something that, ultimately can really affect your bottom line. It is important to note that employees with engaged companies with engaged employees outperform those without engaged employees by up to 202%. Like, that's a massive amount that employee engagement can change overall what happens at your company. And I don't always love to think about people in the form of actual dollars, but I do think that when you put it in as stark a contrast as this particular quote does, it shows that there's a massive loss when you have employees who are not engaged in overall productivity and bottom line financial productivity as well. So that's really something that can be a shocking number, and that's why we put it in here, because it's something that's worth thinking about from the HR and leadership perspective. So now let's talk a little bit about how we can most easily and effectively move towards a break-even point with employees. So this is the continuum of employee kind of hiring, straight from when they've entered to actually when there's a net contribution where value is starting to be produced for the company overall. So we're going to take a look at this employee, Paula, through the rest of this presentation and kind of use her as a case study for how you can view employees and where it's important to note different things that are happening in the employee life cycle. So Paula starts at a company, and she is onboarding. So she's consuming value from the company. Typically, the average break-even point is going to be about 6 months after entry that an employee actually starts to contribute to the company and starts producing value as well. But Paula starts producing value around 4 months, let's say. One thing that I want to briefly mention here is that Leapsome has recently launched a ROI calculator, which is actually really fun to play around with and kind of get an idea of what people enablement software can potentially do for you at your company. So this will be actually part of the information that's sent to you after this webinar. So you can play around with it, put in all of your stats and see what potential savings you could have from investing in people enablement. So I really encourage you to take a look at that and kind of get an idea of what Leapsome could do at your company. So we've arrived at our third question here, which is how can you increase employee engagement at your own organization? So let's take a look at how we could potentially do that through a variety of things. And it's important that we do a quick kind of talk about Leapsome and just the ways that an all-in-one platform can really help support this goal of overall employee engagement, because this is a spider web, right? It is all connected at the end of the day. So engagement is based in being able to develop your people, make sure that they understand where their work is contributing to the overall company, and really making sure that you as a company are aligned overall on your mission and what you want to do as a company. So let's take a look again at our friend Paula from before and her journey at this particular company. So we saw that she has moved into a position of being an engaged employee, which is really great. But unfortunately, she is going to also move away from this company's vision. Now, important to note that Paula is a made-up person and this is not a real company, but we're just using it as a little bit of a case study here so that we can talk about ways that you at your company, if you notice folks moving towards this disengaged state, can really take action on that. So let's say that Paula has decided to move on from her company and her company really wants to say, what could we have done differently? So they decide to launch an engagement survey where they're going to intentionally listen and learn to their current employees. So they get all of this information back. They get some decent NPS scores, and they are able to track this score over time, as we can see here. So we're noticing that it's been trending downward, which is not the way that they want this particular survey to go. So the HR leadership at this company decides that they've done this engagement survey, they've got this interest, they're going to start running pulse surveys. So the big thing that's important to ask in these situations is, what are your employees experiencing that they didn't sign up for, right? Like, what information can you glean from these leavings that allow you to really understand how you can change the experience for employees as they start onboarding newly or folks who are still at the company? So the first thing that they're going to do once they've got these pulse surveys in place is look at the data. Data is a really powerful thing, and it's something that can be a little bit intimidating if you don't have a good way to aggregate it. So that's something that Leapsome does particularly well. And one of the things that this fake company that we were talking about really noticed is that right around the September 14th date, they noticed a big dip in the eNPS scores that they were getting. And this is right around when Paula decided to leave as well. So what they want to do is understand what happened during this period of time that caused this eNPS dip and really leverage that to continue the growth of the overall results that we're seeing here. So once they've done that and realized that there are a loss of potential learning and development opportunities at their company, or that they realized that, there was a disconnect between the strategy that the founders had set forward and the understanding of the employees overall, they're able to take action and decide on ways to move forward. So it's really important to think about collecting this data as an important step in understanding where you stand. Even if you're not 100% sure if your employees are disengaged or engaged, this is a really good place to start. So we would encourage you to consider taking an engagement survey and seeing what you get from that. Now, I can recognize that it is very easy for me to sit here and talk to you in a webinar because I don't have to actually go out and do the things that I'm encouraging you all to do. So I'm going to remind you all to be kind to yourselves and remember that change takes time. Nothing is going to happen overnight. And so progress is more important than perfection. As long as you're taking measured steps towards encouraging employee engagement, encouraging feedback culture, making sure that folks are feeling that as you're moving forward is more important than a blowout perfect strategy that's going to change everything all at once. And engaging with your employees ultimately isn't an option. It's something that's very important if you want to keep employees engaged, if you want to lower that overall number of employees who think that they might not be with you in 12 months. That's very important to consider, that you've got to talk to them. You've got to figure out what's going on and how you can really continue to motivate people as you move forward as a company. And that leads us well into considering the fact that a proactive approach is going to put you in the driver's seat, right? We never want to be in that reactive situation. We really want to think about leaning into understanding what's going on, being proactive about those results, and making sure that you are the person who's in control, not the whims of what's going on at the wider company. So I would challenge you all to think about what small change you could potentially implement in your daily routine starting today, potentially even right after this webinar. You can feel free to throw it in the chat or just use this as a moment of meditation for yourself. I really hope that this presentation was interesting and thoughtful for you and makes you kind of think about ways that you could change your current situation. Just for a quick wrap up here are some of the resources that we used in creating this, this overall presentation for you all. And thank you so much for being here with us today. I really appreciate your time and I hope that you enjoyed it.
Amazing. Thank you, Paige, for that great session. That was a really great conversation. I hope you all enjoyed it as well. I'm actually going to invite Matt to join us here on stage because we did get a few questions from you. Feel free to still drop them into the questions box and we'll make sure to get those answered. But Matt, hello. Thanks for joining me.
Hi, thanks, Alicia. I'm super excited to be talking about these important issues. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, totally. So like I said, we did get some questions in. So we'll just go ahead and start with the first one. I think this is probably relevant to a lot of folks, but do you have any suggestions on how we as HR professionals can drive these conversations with leadership?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the biggest challenges I've seen. So just for a little bit of background info, I'm an account executive here at LeapSum. So I work with a variety of different industries and companies who are in similar positions to you guys, who may be rolling out a platform like this for the first time or making a change. And so one of the common questions I come across all the time is, how do we as HR folks frame these conversations to leadership and drive that value, right? And so there's a few different approaches here, but I think the key thing that I've seen be very successful is one, both framing it in terms of cultural impact as well as framing the business impact. So in terms of framing the cultural impact, Paige touched upon this in her presentation as well. Cultural impact of engagement is something that can be a huge driving factor towards ongoing growth as well as building a sustainable community, right? You can feel that discontentment if people are not engaged in the work that they're doing, can be felt across all aspects of the business from an efficiency standpoint, from a sustainability standpoint. But on the flip side, if you take a proactive approach to these issues by building a thriving culture, where team members are engaged in the work that they're doing, this helps drive the company vision forward. So I think that's a great way to be able to bring the conversation to the table. From there, oftentimes leaders want to actually know, okay, but what are the numbers, right? And you guys are in an awesome position as, HR professionals where you are working with people both in onboarding and outboarding, and you're having those conversations regularly. And you can actually see that firsthand, right? So I think being able to, one, speak to the fact that engaged employees do typically outperform those that are disengaged by up to 200%, and also identifying some of the key factors from the fact that the break-even point is 6 months from the starting point of an employee. It just goes to show that turnover is one of the biggest detractors for any company's growth. So as Paige mentioned, we do have a new ROI calculator that can be great for kind of plugging in different numbers and different scenarios for your unique use case. And that will be sent out as part of the resources that we provide after this as well. So I think those are great ways to bring the conversation to the table.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. And we actually did get a request to share the resources page that Paige had on her presentation. So I've pulled that up. I'm going to share that here as we continue to answer questions. But give me just 1 second to make sure that I can make that happen. So if y'all can see that, should be able to see that there. And then we do have a couple more questions. And to Matt's point, the ROI calculator will go out along with a link to the State of the Global Workplace report. And so we'll have that for you all and in the follow-up email as well. Let's see, back to our questions here. Given that the world of work is continuously evolving as we speak, it can be more tricky these days to keep up with the workforce's expectations while still being true to the company's values. How can organizations successfully navigate these changes and let their employees know they're dedicated to employee growth?
Okay, yeah, that is definitely a big issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
For me myself, I came from a education background where turnover was constantly changing, adapting to working remotely, et cetera, right? These are issues that we're continually facing. So there's no silver bullet, right? That being said, our platform is built from the ground up to be very dynamic and flexible, as well as support a continuous development with a feedback loop that drives actionable insights. So what I mean by that is part of our core platform module system is that it includes a competency framework, which allows every employee to see what are the current expectations for their role and the skills that they should be working on, as well as being able to see what the next level looks like for them. So they can always get an idea of what that roadmap for their career trajectory looks like. And to support that, we have other tools that are always included as well, from our one-on-ones and team meeting template module, which allows you to create agendas and action items for your team meetings to support ongoing conversations around career development, as well as skills, et cetera. And also our instant feedback module, which is included too. This is to help build a more kind of communal sense around continuous feedback. So you can give praise, you can give shout outs, kudos, as well as anonymous suggestions too. So that allows you to have that kind of feeling of constant support. Now, beyond that, it comes from, I think, building a structure around it. So, employees can feel heard, right, when they give their reviews or they give their surveys. But from there, as leaders, right, you can use the tools that we have to then take that feedback, take those insights, and actually build a culture around having ongoing conversations. So all of our tools are designed to be adaptable and fully customizable. So you're not limited to any specific templates or anything like that. So as your org changes, or requirements change over time, you can adapt any of our modules and templates as well to support those changes.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, one of the first words you said there was dynamic. So I think that's probably like the key here. It's like being able to continuously kind of reflect on what you're doing, what it's looking like, and where you need to kind of continuously make changes and really be agile in your approach. So I think that's a really, true and thoughtful way of approaching it. We do have one more question. Again, if any of you have still some questions in here, actually, looks like we've got a couple more in here. So can you share any insights into how other organizations have successfully rolled out employee engagement programs where they didn't have one before?
Where they didn't have one before. Okay, cool. Yeah, so the way that we approach onboarding and implementation is that we're not here to just kind of sell you a product. We view it truly as a partnership. And so we actually have a full suite of resources available for every company that comes on, as well as our designated customer success manager that would be working with you to create like a customized roadmap for your implementation plan. So to kind of give you a little bit more insights there, let me pull up my screen really quickly here, actually. All right, you should be able to see my screen here. So we have a ton of different resources to provide you with a very customized customer onboarding experience. So what that includes is, like I said before, a dedicated customer success manager. This is an industry expert who will have worked with other industries or companies like your own, and they will actually spend time with you to create a custom onboarding plan and implementation plan. So what that means is they will go over any sort of implementation needs, synchronization needs, and also just a roadmap for trainings, et cetera, for customizing these templates. So they'll be supporting you along the way, because obviously your success is our success as well, and we view this truly as a partnership. Part of our approach to this is the reason why we are actually top rated. You can check out our G2 scores, which is a website that creates aggregate scores from verified user reviews to compare different tooling. So we are top rated in terms of most implementable, as well as ROI, best results, etc. So that's due to the fact that we continue to support our organizations over time. And so they'll actually, even throughout past onboarding, they'll actually set up check-ins with you as well along the way, where you can go over the analytics, the usage rates, the ROI, and they'll set those up with you so that way you continually have conversations with our team as well to make sure that the tool is being utilized to the fullest, and that you're getting strong ROI and success rates.
That's awesome. And then we do have one more question. I'm actually going, so the question is, why choose LeapSum? And this is what I think is probably best in this kind of scenario, because we can give you all the reasons why to choose LeapSum. But to better understand your organization, your needs, might be easier to have a direct conversation. So Matt, I don't know if you want to put in the chat your email address and have folks reach out to you directly to have that conversation. Might just be a better option at this point, but just to make sure that we're having a very thoughtful conversation around what an organization's needs are. So I am going to, I think we've got maybe one more question. Nope, we've got Matt's information is in there. Oh, go ahead.
Yep, so I actually just left my email if you'd prefer to reach out to me. And I also included a link to my calendar. So I would, obviously love to meet with any of you and, set up an intro call so that way we can talk about your specific company situation, learn about your use case, your needs, et cetera. As I mentioned before, there never is really a silver bullet when it comes to people enablement. So that way we like to be very thorough and make sure we have a full understanding of your use case and align around, strategies for addressing that.
Cool. Awesome. I think that gets us through our questions. So thank you all again for joining us today. It was great to have you all here. Hope you enjoyed this session and hope that it was helpful and insightful for you. Thanks to Paige for leading the conversation, and thank you, Matt, for joining for the Q&A. And yeah, we'll see you all next time. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Thank you all. Bye.